God is love, and where true love is, God himself is there. Please be seated. Jesus has a lot to say about love in today's gospel. It had me thinking a little bit about Valentine's Day a week or so ago. On Valentine's Day, sweethearts around the world send messages of love to each other. Messages like, Happy Valentine's Day to the most special person in my life. Or, You're my everything. Happy Valentine's Day. Or the extremely gushy, Valentine, you take my breath away every single day. Ah. Here's a good one. I love you more than pepperoni pizza. Charles Schulz once declared, all you need is love, but a little chocolate now and then doesn't hurt. I remember getting Valentine's cards from my sweetie through the years. Valentine's cards that said something like, thank you for being my soulmate. Oh, isn't that nice? So I'm not sure what to make of the one she sent me this year. It said, Happy Valentine's Day and thanks for being my emergency contact. It's remarkable how things change over the decades, huh? But of all those messages, all those sweet sentiments, all the whispers over candlelight dinners on Valentine's Day, I'm going to bet no one received the message that Jesus delivers in today's gospel. They're some of Jesus' most famous and challenging words. Love your enemies. Love your enemies. Doesn't work well on a Hallmark card, but it works very well in a Christian life. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who abuse you. Turn the other cheek. Give without expecting anything in return. Be merciful. Be merciful. Love for enemies is not a Valentine's Day sort of love. Valentine's Day love is warm, fuzzy feelings. It's emotion. It is the love of romance and sweet sentiment, and it is wonderful. If you've ever been in love with someone, you know the power of romantic love. But the love that Jesus is talking about, love for all, it's not an emotion, but rather an action that wills the good of the other person. It wants what's best for the other, for every other, always. This love is a commitment to seek the good and to work for the good and welfare of others. When Jesus says, love your enemies, be good to those who hate you, he's recalling the admonition in Exodus 23 that says, when you come upon your enemy's ox or donkey going astray, you shall bring it back. When you see the donkey of one who hates you struggling under its burden, you must help to set it free. So when Jesus says we must love with our whole heart, mind, and soul, he's not talking about an idea or an emotion, but about action. The action of Proverbs 25 that says, if your enemies are hungry, give them bread to eat. If they are thirsty, give them water to drink. Countercultural, if I've ever heard such a thing. Biblical love is not about romantic attraction. In fact, there may be no attraction at all. To love one's neighbor, according to Leviticus 19, is to do something helpful or merciful for them. And this even includes the alien, the sojourner, the foreigner who is passing through or living in the land. That person is also to receive the same love and mercy you would show to the native born among you. Leviticus 19. Love and mercy bridge divides and give us a taste of God's kingdom here on earth as it is in heaven. We heard a good example of love as showing mercy in our first reading today. Marvelous, marvelous passage from Genesis about Joseph of the amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. You might remember that Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers. They were jealous of him, and so they plotted to kill him. But they decided to sell him instead. In today's passage, Joseph is now Pharaoh's right-hand man, all powerful. He's the second most powerful person in the world. And his brothers, starving and seeking grain because of famine, they stand before him. Joseph is all powerful. He can do anything he wants to them. And what does he do? He has mercy. He forgives them. He even sees this ordeal as part of God's plan. Joseph is merciful as God is merciful, because mercy is rooted in love. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. We say those words maybe hundreds of times, but do we live them out? Our ability to forgive others is rooted in God's radical and abundant forgiveness toward us. You don't find love your enemies on Hallmark cards, and you don't hear it much in the world around us. What we hear a lot of is an eye for an eye. If someone harms you, harm them back more. Destroy your enemies. The news is constantly trying to convince us that people with whom we might disagree don't just have a different point of view, they are bad people. Rather than trying to find common ground, to listen, be respectful, or simply agree to disagree, the opponent must be defeated. Hours of these kinds of messages every day. They are corrosive to the soul. They're harmful to the spirit. People who see things differently than you don't just have a different point of view, they are the enemy. But the one with whom we might disagree is a beloved child of God, made in God's image and likeness and loved unconditionally, just like we are. Someone once told me that sometimes you have to love someone until they learn to love themselves. I like that. Love your enemies, for they are children of God too. You can love someone with whom you might disagree, someone who's harmed you, someone you don't like. Because Christian love is not about warm, fuzzy feelings, but rather an act of the will to want and to do what's best for another. The late Vietnamese Buddhist Thich Nhat Hanh devoted his life to peace among all people during the Vietnam War. In his book, Living Buddha, Living Christ, he asserts that when we look deeply into that which separates us from others, we see that the person you call your enemy is also suffering. As soon as you see that, the capacity of accepting and having compassion for them is there. Jesus called this loving your enemy. When you are able to love your enemy, he or she is no longer your enemy. The idea of enemy vanishes and is replaced by the notion of someone who is suffering and needs your compassion. He goes on. Doing this is sometimes easier than you might have imagined, but you have to practice. If you read the Bible but don't practice, it will not be much help. In Buddhism, practicing the teaching of the Buddha is the highest form of prayer. The Buddha said if someone is standing on one shore and you want to go to the other shore, he has to either use a boat or swim across. He cannot just pray, "Oh, other shore, please come over here for me to step across." Praying without practicing is not real prayer. I think that what he might be suggesting there is that love takes practice. Love is practice. It is the practice of reaching across divides, seeing every neighbor as a child of God, and showing mercy and love, always and to all. Amen.